It started small, the kind of thing you'd expect from an overzealous HOA board member with too much free time and an inflated sense of authority. One morning, tucked neatly into my mailbox between the usual bills and flyers, there it was, a formal-looking envelope with the HOA's logo stamped at the top. The letter inside was short, but dripping with passive-aggressive charm. According to Karen, the self-appointed queen of our community's aesthetics, my front door color was, in violation of the neighborhood standards. She claimed the deep forest green paint clashed with the HOA's approved palette, which, in her words, consisted of subtle, welcoming tone. It felt less like a friendly suggestion and more like a threat wrapped in bureaucratic politeness. A week later, another letter arrived, this time with printed photos of my house, taken from multiple angles, like some sort of neighbors whispered about her constant complaints, the way she'd badger the board about maintaining property values and preserving the integrity of the community. At that point, it was still just paperwork and petty. A garden gnome my daughter picked out at a craft fair? Non-conforming decorative item. And yes, she actually underlined that part twice. But it wasn't just the letters anymore. Karen's campaign shifted into a personal crusade. She started showing up at my house unannounced under the guise of official inspections. I'd open my door to see her standing there with her clipboard, pursing her lips like she was staring at a crime scene. She'd ask questions that were more like accusations. Why was my side gate slightly ajar? Why were there unapproved plant species in my flower bed? Why was my holiday wreath still hanging 2 days after New Year's? The way she spoke made it feel less like I was her neighbor and more like I was on trial for violating the sacred laws of the HOA kingdom she ruled over in her mind. She began roping in other residents too. I'd see her whispering to people on the sidewalk, pointing toward my house, like she was warning them about a dangerous animal in the neighborhood. A few started avoiding eye contact with me entirely, clearly influenced by her running comment. I had just settled in, the quiet wrapping around the house like a blanket, when the faintest smell of smoke reached my nose. At first, I thought maybe a neighbor was burning leaves or someone had lit a late-night fire pit. But then it grew stronger, thicker, creeping through the air vents until it clung to my throat. My stomach dropped. An instinct yanked me to my feet. When I opened the front door, the night sky glowed in a way it never should have. An orange shimmer danced across my lawn, flickering wildly like the reflection of a nightmare. My eyes followed the glow to the side of my house, where flames were clawing their way up the wall, eating the siding like it was paper. Heat blasted my face, stealing the breath from my lungs. For a moment, I just stood there frozen, my mind refusing to believe what my eyes were telling me. Then adrenaline took over. I shouted for my family, my voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. The smoke was everywhere now, curling up the staircase, filling the hallways, staining the ceiling with ugly black clouds. I could hear the wood groaning and popping under the fire's grip, the sound of something solid breaking down into nothing. My hand shook as I grabbed whatever I could, phones, a blanket. The fire trucks arrived in a rush of flashing lights and screaming sirens, their tires grinding against the pavement as firefighters leapt into action. Water hissed as it met the flames. Instead, there was an undercurrent, something unspoken that made the whole scene feel heavier than just loss. And then I saw her. Karen, every so often, one of them would glance at me, the look in their eyes a mixture of sympathy and the grim focus of someone who had seen this scene too many times before. The flames had been beaten back, but the damage was everywhere, charred walls standing like jagged teeth, smoke curling lazily into the night sky. What had been I told him everything, right down to the smallest details, including Karen's long history of harassment. I half expected them to brush it off as a petty neighbor dispute, but instead, one of them scribbled her name in a small notebook with a slow, deliberate motion. That gave me a flicker of hope, but it didn't make the waiting any easier. Meanwhile, my life became a carousel of paperwork and logistics. Insurance adjusters called at odd hours. I catch sight of her walking past the ruins of my house, not with the awkward, careful glances most people gave, but with a slow, deliberate stare, as if she were inspecting her handiwork. Once, I even saw her take out her phone. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands folded tightly to keep them from shaking. The smell of burnt wood still lingering in my memory, no matter how much time had passed. Papers were stacked neatly in front of me, evidence photographs tucked into manila folders, each one a frozen moment from the worst night of my life. Each piece landed like a weight on the table between us. She sat rigid but composed, occasionally whispering something to her attorney, her face betraying nothing. I could feel eyes on me from the gallery, a mixture of curiosity and quiet judgment from neighbors who had come